Please put your palms together. Homage to our fundamental teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Homage to our fundamental teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Homage to our fundamental teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Okay, good evening. Tonight we are going to start looking into the Agama Sutra. The Agama Sutra is split into four sections. One of the sections is called the Connected Discourses, which are a collection of teachings that the Buddha's disciples compiled together after his nirvana. The middle length discourses are passages where they are slightly longer than the ones in the connected discourses. The long discourses are exactly like this, what the name says. The passages in there are slightly longer than the ones in the middle length discourses. And the numbered discourses are passages and teachings that are more categorized. So some kind of filing system, more easier for us to find related teachings. Today, we're going to look into one of the sutras of the long discourses. It's basically how a world came into being. Before we start, I'd like to go over briefly about the 4 stages of impermanence that practically everything goes through, as long as it's impermanent. For example, a plant can grow from a seed and eventually bloom into a flower. This flower, once it becomes a flower, it's becoming from its seed to the flower. Once it's a flower, it stays in the state of a flower for a little while. This is the stage of dwelling. After a while, it starts to wilt and decompose. Once with the decomposing is the destruction stage, and then it's no more after it's completely decomposed, and that's the stage of emptiness. Its seed will probably grow back into another flower. That's the cycle of becoming again. So at the beginning of this particular sutra, we are at the end of the first great disasters. There are 3 great disasters. The disaster of fire, disaster of water, and disaster of wind. At the beginning of the sutra, we are looking at the fire disaster, which is a huge fire that burns all the way from a Vici hell, the hell that is the deepest, lowest hell, all the way to the first dhyana heaven. So over here, I listed heavens, the desire heaven, which are the 6 heavens closest to us. And then above that, we have the first dhyana heavens, which is these 3 heavens right here. And then there are the second dhyana heavens above that. So in the great disaster of fire, the fire burns from the Vici hell all the way to the great Brahma heaven. So everything from the great Brahma heaven and below is burnt. All living beings living in these areas are all gone. There are no more living beings by that time. I would like to turn your attention particularly to this particular heaven right here, called the heaven of light and sound, because after this great disaster of fire, there was one particular being in this heaven of light and sound whose blessing has come to an end. And so he was reborn to the highest heaven that was burned, which is the great Brahma heaven. But he was only one living being. When he got there, he thought he was born there naturally because there was nobody there but him. Many people know him to be as God, the creator of all, and he's usually depicted as an older and wise being. But in this sutra, he is described in appearance as very youthful, something more like this. In fact, that's what his name is. His name is literally the youth. When the youth was born in the great Brahma heaven, he thought, wow, this is amazing. Nobody gave birth to me. I must be here naturally. I must be king of this heaven. So some people know him as the great Brahma king because he is born in the great Brahma heaven. But then he thought to himself, it would be nice if there were other living beings with me too. So it happened to be at that time when he had this thought, there were other living beings in that same heaven of light and sound, whose blessings also were about to come to an end. And so they descended and were reborn in the great Brahma heaven. When they went there, they saw, wow, there's another being here before us. So yes, he must be our creator. He must be our parent. He is the king. So not only did the youth think he was king and the creator of everything, all these living beings after him also thought he was the creator. In Indian mythology and cosmology, a world system revolves around a big mountain, Mount Sumeru. Mount Sumeru is flat on top and is thinner at the middle. So at the very beginning of this world and all worlds, there was no light. At this time, there were more living beings from the heaven of light and sound whose blessing has come to an end. This time, they were not reborn in the great Brahma heaven, but actually reborn right down into earth. It didn't bother them that there was no light because they still had light of their own. They could still fly, although not high enough to reach a heaven, but they were still able to fly. They saw that at the surface of the earth, there was something called di wei, or flavor of the earth. And some of the very curious, it had the texture of ghee or clarified butter, and it tasted very, very sweet, like honey. Some of the heavenly beings were very curious, and so they went and poked at this flavor of the earth and tasted it. It tasted very good, and the more they ate, the more heavier they got. Very soon, the ones who ate too much could not fly anymore. Not only could they not fly, they actually lost their light. So because there were no light on earth at that time, the earth was very, very dark. But there was a huge gust of wind that blew up this big light globe, which became the sun. And the living beings observed it rising in the east and slowly making its way across the sky. Eventually, it set in the west, and then it was gone for a while. After a while, they waited and it arose again in the east and made its way slowly across the sky. By the time it set in the west the second time, the living beings referred to that as one day, and the crossing of the sun across the sky previously was the day before that, and so days came into being. Later on, another really big gust of wind blew up another globe, and that became the moon. They settled right at the middle of Mount Sumeru. Because the living beings were making fun of each other, the ones who could still fly, who still had light, were a bit prettier, made fun of the ones who could not fly anymore, and the ones who could not fly, they were jealous and angry at the ones who could fly. And so the flavor of the earth disappeared. This was replaced by something called the rind of the earth, or DP. It looked like a pancake, and it smelled very nice. It tasted very sweet, but it was notably inferior to the flavor of the earth. When the living beings saw this, they were very upset and actually repentant, remorseful, because they knew they were originally from the heaven of light and sound. And because their blessings were used up, they came to earth and ate the flavor of the earth. But then they gave rise to greed and to anger and jealousy. And so it disappeared. And now all they have left was the rind of the earth. They knew that this was the result of their negative conduct, but they didn't have anything else to eat. So they continued eating the rind of the earth. But the more they ate, the heavier they got, the more coarse they got, the more unattractive they got. And so the ones who ate less would laugh at the ones who ate more. And the ones who ate more were jealous of the ones who ate less and were angry at the ones who ate less. Because of their negative conduct, their unpositive bad conduct, the rind of the earth also disappeared. This was replaced by something called the peel of the earth, or Di Fu. Its appearance was very much like the robes, the celestial robes, and it tasted very sweet, but was definitely inferior to the rind of the earth, which was inferior to the flavor of the earth. When the living beings saw this, they were very, very upset. They said, "We were originally heavenly beings from the heaven of light and sound. But then we came to earth and then we ate the flavor of the earth. But because we were greedy, we were angry, and we were jealous, that disappeared. And then we had to eat the rind of the earth. But then we were even more greedy, even more jealous, and even more upset. All these negative energy made that disappear. And now something less tasteful is here for us. So it's the peel of the earth. But nevertheless, they still ate it because there was nothing else to eat. But the more they ate, the more heavier they got, the more coarse they looked, the more unattractive they were. So the ones that ate less would laugh at the ones who ate more. And the ones who ate more would be jealous and angry at the ones who ate less. So because of all this negative energy, all this bad conduct, the peel of the earth also disappeared. This time, it was replaced by something called gengmi, this kind of grain that grew on the surface of the earth. When the living beings saw this, they were very remorseful and they cried out, "We were originally heavenly beings from the heaven of light and sound. But we came to this earth and we ate the flavor of the earth. But because we were jealous and angry and we teased each other, we talked behind our backs, all this bad conduct led to it being disappeared, and we only had the rind of the earth. But we were still jealous and angry and upset. So this rind of the earth also disappeared and was replaced by the peel of the earth. We didn't change and we were still making fun of each other. We were still angry and we were still jealous. And so that also disappeared. Now what we have is this kind of grain, the gengmi from the earth. Nevertheless, they didn't have anything else to eat, so they had to bear with the gengmi. And the more they ate, originally, they all did not have gender differences. They were all the same. But the more they ate of this gengmi, they started to have physical differences. So there was a very sharp difference between male and female. And because there were differences, there was a attraction. And very soon there was a couple who committed sexual conduct. This couple was actually caught, and people who caught them said, "Wow, you guys are doing very impure conduct." But they were very repentful and remorseful of this. However, they still stuck together, and so they became the first husband and wife. Very soon, because there were a lot of other people who formed couples. Before this, all the living beings who were reborn to earth from the heaven of light and sound were born transformationally. But because there was this coupling, from then on, people were born through the womb. Because they were couples, they wanted some privacy, so they started to build homes. And homes together made little towns, which became villages and which became cities. Every morning, they would go out to harvest some food, and then the gungmi had a good thing. You just needed to harvest it in the morning, and then by evening, it would be ready to eat. You did not need to cook it. One person looked over at his neighbor and he said, "Wow, why did you get so much food? Why did you harvest so much food?" And his neighbor said, "Well, if I got more food, then I wouldn't have to go out the next day. And so I would have enough for 2 days." And so this person thought, that's a really good idea. Maybe I should get enough for 3 days. And somebody else thought, I should get enough for 4 or 5 days. And so people got really greedy and very lazy. So then somebody else started to think, I don't even want to go out and harvest anything anymore. I think I would just go and steal my neighbors, take my neighbors, because it's easier to take somebody's than going to collect food. So he went and stole his neighbor's food, but he actually got caught. This time when he got caught, he was not remorseful at all. Originally, the gungmi was ready to get to harvest on the ground, but because of all this tension between people, it grew a husk over it. And it grew stalks and roots. Once it was harvested, it did not grow back anymore. And you had to cook it. So people had to divide fields and start to cultivate their grain in order to eat, in order to survive. So when people saw this, they were very, very upset. They said, "We were originally heavenly beings from the heaven of light and sound, but our blessings were used up, and so we came to earth and we started eating the flavor of the earth. But we were greedy and jealous, and we were angry. And so this disappeared and was replaced by the rind of the earth. We were still greedy and jealous and hateful. And so this disappeared, replaced by the peel of the earth. We didn't change. We were still greedy. We were still angry, and we were still jealous. So this generated the gungmi. But even the gungmi had a husk and was not easy to cultivate. We have to work for it now. What have we come to? Now people are stealing and lying and not remorseful of their negative conduct. This is all brought about by us. We should elect somebody to be our judge, be our leader, and just make everybody be the judge of everybody. So within the crowd, there was somebody who was, in appearance, very tall, very adorned, and they elected him as their leader. He would protect the people to the best of his ability, and he became their judge and their king. His son then became the next king, and that king's son became the next king, and so forth. Down the line, there was a king named Pure Rice King who had a son named Bodhisattva. And Bodhisattva had a son named Rahula. I just want to point this out because Pure Rice King's son, Bodhisattva, is Shakyamuni Buddha, and his son was the Venerable Rahula. This is the group called the Kshatriyas. They are the ruling group, also the warrior groups. There were some people from this particular group that did not like their lifestyle. And so they wanted to go into the mountains to cultivate pure conduct. But they would come out every day to for alms, and people would see them and praise their conduct, saying they could renounce all their household life to cultivate pure conduct. And so they named this group Brahmins. However, there were some Brahmins who could not stand the loneliness of the forest life and meditation all day. So they moved back into the cities. And in order to sustain themselves, they would bless people or say prayers for people in exchange for some kind of food or offering so that they could sustain themselves. So now we have two groups. We have the Kshatriyas, we have the Brahmins. The rest of the people are divided into two categories, the Vaishyas and the Sudras. These both groups, they both have some kind of trade or some kind of skill to help sustain themselves. The difference is that the Vaishyas are very successful businessmen. They not only can sustain themselves, but they can actually have enough to support other people and if they wanted to. The Sudras do have a trade or a skill, but it's more common and they can barely support themselves. An example would be the Venerable Upali, who was a very poor barber before he left home under the Buddha. So within the group of the Kshatriyas, there are some people who said, I want to go and end my suffering. I do not want to revolve in the cycle of birth and death anymore. I want to go and be a shramana, basically a cultivator, and end suffering. So there were those who actually went into the mountains and became cultivators. There are those in the group from the Brahmins too, who actually did not like their lifestyle and they renounced everything, wanted to end suffering, and became shramanas. There were also those who were from the Vaishya group who also wanted to end suffering, attain liberation. And so they renounced their householder's life and became shamanas. Also in the group of the Sudras, there were people who did not like their lifestyle. They wanted to attain liberation. And so they also renounced their householder's life and became shamanas. Of the Kshatriyas who became shamanas, if they did not have good mouth karma, did not have good mind karma, and did not have good action, when after death, they did endure suffering and undergo retribution. Those from the group of the Brahmins who became shamanas, but did not have good mouth karma, did not have good mind karma, and did not have good action. When they passed away, they also endured suffering and had to undergo retribution. Those from the group of the Vaishyas who became shamanas, but did not have good mouth karma, did not have good mind karma, and did not have good action. After they passed away, they also had to endure suffering and undergo retribution. Those from the group of the Sudras who became shamanas, who had no good mouth karma, no good mind karma, and no good action, when they passed away, they also underwent suffering and endured suffering. Bad retribution. However, those from the group of the Kshatriyas who were shamanas, who actually had good mouth karma, good mind karma, and good action, when they passed away, they had good retribution. They attained liberation. Those from the group of the Brahmins who were shamanas and had good mouth karma, good mind karma, and good action karma. After they passed away, they were able to enjoy happiness and attain liberation. Those from the Vaishya group who became shamanas, who had good mouth karma, had good mind karma, and good action, when they passed away, they were able to enjoy happiness and have good retribution. those from the group of the Sutras who became Shramanas, who had good mouth karma, good mind karma, and good action. When they passed away, they had good retribution and enjoyed happiness. So this is where I would like to pause a little bit because we've talked so far about how the world came into being, how the heavenly beings came down from the heaven of light and sound, how the world formed, and how the groups of people formed. So why do you think the Buddha told the story? What was his purpose? Was it just because we were curious and he was just telling this for our entertainment? I think we could break up into groups to Amitofo, are we back yet?
Yes, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, we are here.
Okay, so could somebody share what do you think the Buddha? Why did the Buddha tell the story?
Which group?
It's K.
K group.
阿弥陀佛法师
阿弥陀佛。
这里是 K 组K 组组长会诊一下刚刚组员的那个分享刚刚有分享到就是佛陀为什么要告诉世界形成的由来呢？主要就是我们有讨论到，就是因为告诉其实是想要让我们人类知道说，其实我们人类呢以前都是有神通，然后因为我们有这个贪心嫉妒愚痴障碍。因为这些种种呢，所以导致我们就是堕入了这个世界上，然后其实就是要提醒我们要懂得去回光返照，然后也是因为我们也有谈到就是因果的关系，那就是因为之前人类愚痴，然后造了什么因，所以如今就得到什么果。这个是我们 K 组的分享。阿弥陀佛。
阿弥陀佛。Can somebody else, another group, also share, please?
So K group's response is to being effective. And basically human beings was one spiritual powers, but we lose that power. And also it's also talking about cause and effect. We should be aware of our own conducts. Sorry, that's all I remember.
Okay.
Thanks, Jen.
May I add some supplements? The group side says that due to we have the three greedy, hatred, and stupid, so we lose our spiritual power. And then that's why the Buddha told us how can we stop this kind of bad karma. Thank you.
Yeah. Can somebody else also share?
还有其他组要分享吗？
请那个 I 组的林先生讲一下吧。
好，我想要再补充一下，就是说我们这组还有提到说，可能佛陀想要教导我们什么是共业，就是刚来到地球这些人，一开始可能有些人做好，有些人做不好，但是共业造成这个食物的变化，是影响到大家所有的人。那我自己再翻译一下这个。So we also talked about the concept of collective karma. I think this is a concept that the Buddha wanted to teach us. So from a group of people, their actions, behaviors, although they're different, some are good, some are bad. The effect just influences everyone, and we have to endure the consequences together, collectively. 就是这样子，阿弥陀佛。
Thank you, thank you.
我也加一点，我觉得还有一个用意就是佛陀想让我们记住我们是从哪里来的，也就是大家曾经都是有佛性，将来有一天应该还可以回去，给大家有信心。 So one of the purpose is the Buddha telling us where we are originally from. Never forget where we supposed to be. Yeah.
Thank you. Everybody's answer was very good. The Buddha actually made a conclusion in the sutra. He actually said that he himself is a shramana. And so when he got liberation, he said that I've ended my birth and death, and I've established my Brahma conduct, which is my pure conduct. And all that needs to be done has been done. I will no longer revolve in the cycle of birth and death. Within these four categories, there are those who accomplish the right conduct and attain arhatships. Those are the foremost. So the Buddha actually emphasized that it doesn't matter where you're born. We talked about the four categories of people. We had the warriors and the rulers, the Kshatriyas. We had the religious leaders, the Brahmins. We had the business people, were the Vaishyas, and we had the laborers, which are the Sudras. It didn't matter which category you were from. It didn't matter what you did in the past. As long as you had good mouth karma, you had good mind karma, and good action, then you could also attain liberation. Even if you were from the higher class, the religious class, the Brahmins, from the Kshatriyas, if you did not had good mouth karma, did not have good mind karma, did not have good actions, you would still undergo retribution. So the Buddha is exactly what you've been discussing. The Buddha does give us a way out. There's no distinguish. Everybody is equal here. As long as we do good, we will get good. It doesn't matter where we come from because we are going to revolve again as long as we are not out of this cycle of birth and death. So the Agama Sutras have very valuable lessons. They're very precise and sometimes repetitive and short, but they have a big point to them. So the Buddha is trying to emphasize that he was able to cultivate, he was able to attain liberation, and so could everybody else. Okay, so that
Jennifer, can you translate that to Mandarin, please?
OK， 所以这个佛陀的结论就是：我生死已尽，半行已立，所作已办，受后有。此四种中，出明形成得阿罗汉为最第一。基本上，佛陀就是教导我们，不管你的出身是高贵或者是低贱，你都能成佛，都能得到。所以，不管只要你守住你的身口意。要努力修，不管你是什么样的你的身份是地位是什么，你都能成佛，都能得到。
Okay, thank you. That ends our lecture today, and I hope everybody could go back and do a reflection. What is your flavor of the earth? What is your D-way? It doesn't have to be food. It just anything that makes you can't let go of, the thing that obstructs you most from going forward into your cultivation. But this is a reflective piece. Please do not turn this in, but it's a good thing to reflect upon.
今晚的功课是自我反省，不需要教，就是你的地位是什么，就是你最不能放下的，这就是你的地位。那你的就是有什么东西没有办法阻止你前进的，这就是你的地位。所以就让大家回去想想你的地位是什么。
Okay, let's do a transference. We're going to do it in English today. May the merit from this practice adorn all the Buddha's lands, repay the kindness from above and rescue those in paths below. May all who see or hear of this resolve upon awakening, and when this body meets its end, be born together in the land of bliss. All in respect to the Venerable Master. Amitofo.